Alright, so Google just released a new model to its Gemini platform called Gemini 3.1 Pro, and apparently this new model is just very good at creating a vector graphics file, also known as an SVG file. And these are some examples that were generated by this new AI model. So this is basically just a comparison between this new model versus the previous model of Gemini, and as you can see, it is just really good at turning this text input into some nice looking and professional animations that maybe later you can use on a website or even on a video. So given that this model can create an SVG code really well, I was curious, is it possible to use this new AI model to turn, let's say, a picture or a logo into an SVG file? Well, I tried this model and I would say I think it is able to do so. So this is one example. I tried to turn the logo of Figma into an SVG code or SVG file, and this is the code that I got. And after that, when I render the code using this SVG viewer, I got basically the same content, except now it is now in the SVG format, which means I can zoom in into the picture and it's not going to introduce any artifacts into the picture. And that's why the SVG format is very popular on some website icons or logos, because the file is usually very small, but you can use it in any screen size. And also it is quite easy to customize the color or some aspect of the logo later. So that's why the SVG file is very popular. And also I tried again to turn this logo. This is a raster PNG photo that I found on this website, and then I turned it into an SVG code using Gemini. This is the result. Now, just to give you a quick perspective, this is the result from GPT 5.2 thinking. So that is the best model on ChatGPT at the moment, and this is the result. Not quite the same. And this is the attempt from Cloud Opus 4.6, also the best model on the Cloud AI at the moment, and it's not even close. So it is clear that Gemini is the winner when it comes to creating or turning a logo into an SVG code. But that statement was a little bit of lie. So I have tried using the Gemini 3.1 model on some platforms like the Gemini platform, Google AI Studio, and also Google Anti-Gravity. And these tools are owned by Google and they do have this latest model. But it's very interesting that among all of those, the best result, which is this one, was created via Google Anti-Gravity, even though again, I was using the exact same model. So during my research, during my test, what I found was this model is definitely good. It is able to create a fantastic looking SVG file or even SVG animation. I would say it is the best at the moment compared to other third-party models. But this one in particular, this Fox logo, wasn't really actually created by the Gemini 3.1 Pro model. So when I tried to use Google Anti-Gravity to turn this JPEG file into an SVG logo, which by the way look very much the same, it is actually realized that the model is not good enough, or the model is not powerful enough to recreate the exact same visual using its powerful training data. So what it does was it calls a different third-party library basically called VTracer, and then run it and then turn this file, the JPEG file, into the SVG format. That's why it looks really good. That's why it is very much accurate. That's why it's way better than other third-party models, but it is not something that was really done by the model itself. The AI models just realized that it cannot do that, so it just borrows some power from a library called VTracer to do the work for it. Now, in case you are wondering, the actual logo or the actual result that was indeed created by Gemini 3.1 is this one. So it's not the same, by the way, but I would say it's quite similar, but it is not the same compared to this version that was created using that third-party library. So yeah, it is good, but it is also not going to give you the most accurate result. And I guess that's one downside of using Gemini 3.11 Pro if you really want to use it as a tool or as an AI model to turn your logo or any visual into an SVG code, because I would say it is not quite ready. But still, I think it is quite impressive that the model is fully aware of its limitation and actually use a different tool to do the work and make sure that the user will get the best visualization. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how you can turn a logo, any logo, into an SVG code using Gemini Canvas, and also later I'll explain how to use it on the Google Anti-Gravity platform. And by the way, if you are curious of why the initial example where I tried to convert the logo of Figma into SVG and it is apparently look really good, I think it is because the model, the training data within Gemini actually has the code of the Figma logo. Usually some big companies like Meta or maybe Facebook, let's say maybe the logo of Amazon, the logo of Twitter, usually exists in the Gemini training data. That's why it is able to carefully and accurately create the code for me, because it is just not something that AI invent. It is just something that already exists within its training data. That's why it is very, very accurate. But once you introduce it into some logo that doesn't exist in its training data, then you'll get a result that look like this, which is not the same, but I think it is still quite impressive. But anyway, let me show you how you can still use the Gemini platform, especially Gemini Canvas, to create a tool that later can be used to turn your logo into an SVG file. So let's say I'm going to open Gemini on my browser, and this is the prompt that I'm going to use. You can get this in the description down below, and just copy and paste, and then click tools, click canvas, and then make sure that you select the best model, which is right now the Pro variant on Gemini. Click submit, and just wait for this AI tool to create a web-based app that is able to turn a logo or basically any raster picture into an SVG file. Now, you might be wondering why there is the need to use, or maybe create a tool like this using Gemini. Well, I guess I could imagine that you can customize a lot of things of this web tool. You can maybe specify that you want to have a different color. Perhaps you want to do it multiple times. You want to add some watermark or different styles, etc. Those things are quite possible because you have the total control over the code. So that could be some use cases or on where using this tool could be quite beneficial. Now, how about doing this in the Google Anti-Gravity platform? Well, you can just open Google Anti-Gravity on your computer, and let's say I'm going to create a new project or a new workspace. Let me just click file and then click open folder. I'm going to create a new folder. Let's say new SVG converter. Hit enter, and then you can click select folder. So this is the interface. Okay, I'm going to click yes, I trust the authors. And there you go. So right here, you basically have to put the code into the directory of the workspace folder. Usually you can just drag and drop the folder, the image file into this area, but somehow now I cannot do that anymore. So I guess I have to open it manually, refill in File Explorer, and here I'll just drag and drop maybe the logo of Cloud into this one. Just maybe copy and paste. There you go. So we got the logo of Cloud into that directory. And yeah, right now it is in the WebP format, but I want to turn it into an SVG file. So this is the prompt that I'm going to use. It's actually quite simple. I'm going to mention the file name first, which is add, and then Cloud logo. And then, hey, I wanted to use FeedRacer to turn this image file into an SVG code. Make sure to create a new file. Okay, FeedRacer. So FeedRacer is the library that I would say the best at the moment when it comes to turning an image file into an SVG code. So this is my prompt, and make sure to select Gemini 3.1 Pro, and here I'll just select the high version. Click submit, and just wait for Gemini to, well, Google Anti-Gravity to maybe call some dependencies, and will eventually create a new file, which is basically the SVG version of this logo. Now, this will take quite a while, and sometimes it might be asking you permission or some sort of, if you want to accept to run certain command. Now, I guess here I have set it to be always run, so I guess I'm going to minimize this. Now, it is still creating the Gemini Canvas version. Now, just wait for it. So, the library that is used in Gemini Canvas and in Google Anti-Gravity is different. So this one in Google Anti-Gravity is a lot better. I would say the quality is sharper compared to the one that we can generate in Gemini Canvas. But the benefit is, of course, you can create the Gemini Canvas easily. You can also share the web app that you created in Gemini Canvas. And I would say this is the kind of experience that most people would find to be easy and more familiar compared to, let's say, using a dedicated IDE, which is Google Anti-Gravity. Okay, so apparently it will take a bit longer than I expected, so I guess I'll just skip a while and I'll show you the final results of these two options to use Gemini to turn a logo into an SVG file. So I'll be back in a second. Alright, so this is the result of the image or logo to SVG generator that I just created in the Gemini Canvas feature. Now, let me just try maybe one logo. I'll just drag and drop the logo right here into this area. And you have some settings, but I'll just use the default setting. Click Convert SVG. And down here, you'll get the SVG preview. And also, you can get the SVG file. You can click the download button, or you can just copy the code that was generated by this AI tool. Now, how about the anti-gravity version? Let me just open it. So it took actually a bit longer because apparently the VTracer library cannot receive a WebP image format. That's why the AI just confused and eventually decided to convert the image to PNG and then use that PNG to be sent to VTracer, and eventually I got the SVG version of the logo. I think it is quite the same. I would say, yeah, maybe it is a bit smoother, but I would say it's still basically the same picture, but now in the SVG format. So I would say this is quite good, but honestly, I think for most people, it is a lot simpler to use the Gemini Canvas because you can just create it once and you can also share the link. You can use it on the Gemini platform. You can always customize it. But perhaps there is one thing that you need to know when you're using a tool like this, because it is not good. SVG file is not optimized for a very complicated, especially if the logo contains a gradient. Let me give you one example. So this is, let's say, I'll try the old logo of Google, and then I'll click Convert to SVG. So this is the preview, and yeah, as you can see, it looks pretty good. It looks basically the same as in the original logo. So that's pretty good. But if you upload something like the new logo of Google, which has some gradient, by the way, you'll see something that can be quite disappointing. And there you go. So SVG usually cannot handle gradient really well. That's one thing to know when you are planning to turn your logo or any content into the SVG format, because this is one major limitation in this particular format. But other than that, I think this is quite a legitimate a file. If you want to use it on a website, use it on maybe a video, I think this is a really good file format. So I would say the Gemini 3.1 Pro model is very good. It's able to create an SVG file, but do not expect the best quality. It is just okay quality. It is not bad, but at the same time, do not expect the model to be able to recreate the full visual into this new format, because I think there is no AI model that can do something like that, at least at the moment. But hopefully, maybe in the next update, we can get a proper SVG generation from the AI model. So that's basically it. I hope you learned something from this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Have a great day.